3 months passed. I unearthed my wife's affair with my sister's fiancé. Silent I remained, refraining from outbursts or accusations, instead transforming into an invisible presence in my own life. I continued the daily rituals, smiling at breakfast, waving goodbye as Verity departed for her trips, raising a glass to Lachlan at his bachelor party, portraying the devoted spouse and proud sibling so convincingly that neither were privy to my knowledge. While they were orchestrating their treachery, I was meticulously constructing an inescapable trap. My name is Cillian, a venture capitalist who amassed my first million by 28 and reached 10 million by the age of 33. I share this not to boast, but to clarify why Verity chose me as a husband initially, and why she felt so assured she could claim half of my empire upon her departure. Verity and I had been married for 6 years. She possessed an elegant beauty, a result of regular personal training sessions and monthly spa visits. Her wardrobe outmatched that of a Nordstrom department store, and she had no need for employment. Her primary role was being Mrs. Cillian Ashford, which she fulfilled with the devotion of someone who understood its value. Our marriage wasn't flawless. We had grown apart over the previous 2 years, the ardor transforming into routine. Yet I still cherished her, or perhaps it was the memory of who we once were that I adored. I was contemplating couples therapy, hoping we could reconnect, when I stumbled upon Lachlan. The revelation was surprisingly uneventful. Verity had forgot to close her laptop on the kitchen counter before taking a call. I happened to walk by while grabbing coffee and noticed a notification appear. Weekends can't come fast enough for Lachlan, as he informed Tamsy and me about a guy's golf trip. They'll have the entire beach house all to themselves. Verity swiftly replied, "Perfect," which I read while holding my coffee pot, rereading her words multiple times. In that moment, I realized Verity was having an affair with Lachlan Tamsy's fiancé, the man expected to join our family in 3 months. Instead of confronting them instantly or demanding answers, I decided to gather information and assess the situation thoroughly. I filed for a private investigator, but also delved into the matter myself, as I'm not tech-savvy but have connections who are. Within a week, I was able to access both Verity's and Lachlan's cloud accounts. The contents of their texts, emails, photos, location data, everything disclosed a situation far beyond an ordinary affair. Instead, they were orchestrating a scam. Their earliest communications dated back nearly 8 months. We met at a charity event where Tamsin presented Lachlan to the family. It was under the pretense of Verity assisting him in planning a surprise for Tamsin's birthday that they exchanged numbers, but the affair began 2 weeks later. However, it wasn't the sexual aspect that sent shivers down my spine. It was the meticulous planning, the strategic discussions, and their callous treatment of my sister and me as chess pieces in a high-stakes heist. Lachlan was financially bankrupt, desperately so, constructing his image on deception. His flashy car was leased and delinquent by 3 months, his designer clothes were rented, his luxurious condo was heavily mortgaged. In a sequence of disastrous financial decisions, he resorted to gambling as a means to recoup his losses, amassing a near $200,000 debt to creditors who refused leniency with late payments. His strategy was marrying Tamsin, my sister, who inherited almost $5 million from our grandmother at age 25, to gain access to her trust fund. Kind-hearted and trusting, she had already designated him as a beneficiary on several accounts due to her affection for Lachlan. The instant they were wed, he would legally secure enough funds to erase his debts with extra left over. However, Lachlan did not harbor feelings for Tamsin. His messages revealed this, expressing, "She's clingy and always talking about emotions and our future. I can hardly bear the sound of her voice, but her money talks louder. You at least have a planned timeline for departure, while I'm obligated to play the dutiful wife until Cillian finishes constructing the estate, allowing me to divorce him and claim half. Although his lawyers are competent, they won't be able to stop me from walking away with at least $15 million. They had intricate plans in place. Lachlan was meant to marry Tamsin, gradually deplete her funds without her noticing until it was too late, then divorce her and share the earnings with Verity. Meanwhile, Verity would maintain our marriage long enough for me to complete construction on a 40-acre estate I've been developing, adding an additional $20 million to my wealth. After that, she'd initiate the divorce, claim to have relinquished her career for my success, and walk away with half, before they drained both of us and left together. "Picture us in the Maldives a year from now," Verity had penned. "Both of us liberated, both of us affluent, devoid of those tedious siblings for good." I scrutinized every message, each video they exchanged. I listened to their voice notes ridiculing Tamsin's enthusiasm over wedding planning and my insignificant efforts. Cultivate romance with Verity. I spent 3 hours in my home office that night delving into their entire correspondence, and something inside me transformed. The love for Verity I harbored vanished, it evaporated. In its stead was something chillingly sharp and calculating. They desired games? Very well, let them witness a chess player's resolve. The following morning I parted ways with Verity as if nothing had transpired. I inquired about her day. I praised her new dress. I remained the devoted, trusting husband I'd always been and commenced constructing my stratagem. First step was the post-nuptial agreement. One evening I invited Verity to my office, showing a face of concern. "We need to discuss something," I began, causing her immediate worry. "What's going on?" I explained that I had received a call from my lawyer. "It appears the SEC is launching an investigation into one of my early investments. They suspect there might have been illicit trading involved." This was false information, but Verity didn't know that as her eyes showed surprise. "Is this true?" I asked her. She looked anxious. "Could you go to jail?" I responded, shaking my head. No, I assured her, though the investigation could freeze my assets for an extended period, and if they found anything even slightly suspicious but innocent, it might lead to lawsuits, fines, and various financial complexities. I paused, allowing her to process this. "I'm concerned about you," I added. "If my assets get frozen, your accounts could be affected too. You might have to attend depositions. You might even become involved. I don't want you to be affected financially due to my business." She scrutinized me, masking her worry with feigned concern. "What's your proposal?" she inquired. I suggested a post-nuptial agreement. "We'd legally separate our assets, keeping them distinct and clearly owned. This way, if the worst occurs, your funds remain untouched. You will be immune from any of this," I emphasized, adding sincerity to my voice. "No, it's not romantic, but I need to ensure your safety," she agreed swiftly, almost too promptly. "Of course," she said, grasping my hand. "I comprehend entirely. We'll navigate through this together." That week, my lawyers prepared the agreement. It was a bulky document filled with legalese and clauses that would make anyone's eyes glaze over. However, hidden in the middle of a lengthy paragraph about asset division on page 47 was this: provision for the distribution of assets. If either party is proven to commit adultery within the marriage, they relinquish all rights to marital assets, alimony, and shared property. Verity signed the document without fully reading it past page 3. Her lawyer, who Loughlin had recommended, merely skimmed through it. I now possess a legal notarized document that would leave her with nothing if I can substantiate the affair. The next step was securing control over Loughlin's debts. This proved challenging. The individuals to whom Loughlin owed money were not easily accessible. However, I have connections. Through my business investments and clandestine dealings, I know how to locate people who operate covertly. It took 3 weeks and multiple intermediary meetings, but I eventually met with the man managing Loughlin's debt. Surprisingly polite, he was named Victor. "You considering purchasing the debt?" he inquired, nursing an espresso in a cafe, evidently disregarding health regulations. "The entire sum," I replied. 220,000, I'll give you an extra 50. Victor arched an eyebrow. "Why would you overpay? I wish to obtain the collection rights instantly, discreetly. Loughlin shouldn't learn the debt has been transferred until I choose to inform him." Victor scrutinized me for a while, then smiled. "You plan on causing harm?" "Him." "Yes, I appreciate that ambition. We have an agreement." 2 days later, I possessed every dollar owed by Loughlin. The contract was watertight. The debt now belonged to me, and Loughlin remained oblivious to the fact he was no longer dealing with loan sharks. He was dealing with me. The wedding itself, step 3, was planned at a vineyard 2 hours from the city. It promised to be stunning but costly, nearly $80,000 in total. I held back until Tamsin brought up her anxiety over costs before making my proposal during our Sunday brunch. "Why don't you hold your wedding at my estate?" I proposed, and Tamsin appeared taken aback. "Cillian, are you certain? We wouldn't want to be a burden." "You aren't being a burden," I reassured them. "The grounds are completed, the house isn't yet, but the gardens are stunning. I'll take care of the catering, flowers, everything. Think of it as my wedding gift." Tamsin grew emotional and embraced me. Loughlin shook my hand gratefully, his appreciation genuine enough to make me doubt its sincerity. What they didn't realize was that by hosting the wedding at my estate, I had control over all aspects: AV system, security cameras, guest list, timing, every detail, which I spent the following month meticulously preparing. I arranged for a videographer I'd personally hired to compile a highlight reel from the footage I gathered. Not explicit content or anything vulgar. The most incriminating audio and visual evidence of Verity and Loughlin concerned their scheme was captured from a dashboard camera installed covertly in Loughlin's car 3 weeks prior. Verity and Loughlin were seated in the front, parked outside a hotel. Loughlin chuckled. "When I wed Tamsin, her trust fund will clear my debts, enabling us to channel funds into your offshore account." Verity leaned over and kissed him. "Just ensure you keep the child content until Cillian completes the estate. Once the property evaluation is done, I'll file for divorce and seize everything. Then we'll get rid of the siblings." "And vanish," they chuckled. "In fact, I watched that clip about 50 times while planning the wedding, and it never grew old. The wedding day arrived. It was flawless. 75 degrees, clear sky, a gentle wind dispersing the fragrance of jasmine from the gardens, 200 attendees seated in rows of white chairs across the lawn, while a string quartet played Pachelbel, everything aligned with Tamsin's dreams. I stood at the altar as Loughlin's best man, having agreed 2 months prior eagerly. Why not? I was his future brother-in-law. His friend Verity sat in the front row adorning a pale blue dress likely costing more than most people's monthly income. She shone. She caught my eye and smiled. I returned her smile. Tamsin walked down the aisle on her father's arm, looking radiant, joyful, oblivious to the fact that the man awaiting her at the altar saw her as nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. The ceremony commenced. The officiant, a kind gentleman in his 60s who had been acquainted with our family for years, guided us through the traditional passages. He spoke about love, commitment, and the sacred vow of marriage, while I stood there with the rings, anticipating a moment I'd waited for over 3 months. The officiant asked if anyone present knew of any legal reason to prevent this union. Everyone remained silent, as expected. However, I raised my hand, surprising the officiant. "Yes, Cillian," some in the audience chuckled, assuming it was a joke. But I clarified, "I don't merely have an objection, I have proof." Laughter ceased, Tamsin looked puzzled, and Loughlin paled. Verity started to rise, but I pointed to the AV booth at the back of the lawn, where the technician, someone I had personally hired and paid, waited. He nodded, and the screen behind the altar switched off, breaking the romantic slideshow of Tamsin and Loughlin's photos. The video commenced, with the initial scene displaying Loughlin and Verity in his vehicle. The sound quality was exceptional, capturing Loughlin's voice distinctly. He said, "Ever since I said I do, Tamsin's trust fund is handling my debts." Verity's voice followed, instructing him to maintain their child's happiness until Cillian finishes managing the estate. The crowd gasped instantly, with Tamsin swiftly covering her mouth. "Cillian, what?" Loughlin began, raising a hand for silence. "Let's watch the rest," he said. The second clip unfolded, this one captured at a restaurant 3 weeks ago, featuring Verity and Loughlin in a secluded booth. In that conversation, Verity told him she had asked Tamsin to be her matron of honor, which was surprising considering she would stand beside her while marrying for her wealth. Moreover, Cillian had invited him to partner with him in golf next month. These individuals, she remarked, were incredibly trusting, almost laughable. The third clip proved decisive, showing Loughlin reclining in his seat. "In a year we'll be in the Maldives, with neither of us burdened, nor either of us associated with those monotonous siblings anymore." The screen blackened, the ensuing quiet was oppressive, as 200 individuals remained motionless, gazing at the altar. Tamsin was weeping, not wailing, just silent tears trickling down her face, directed towards Loughlin. "Tamsin, I can clarify." Loughlin extended his hand. She retreated. "Keep your distance from me." Verity rose from her seat, her complexion flushed, contorted with anger. "You violated our accounts," she yelled at me. "You trespassed on our privacy. This is unlawful." I turned to her, my tone even. "However, it's not. Your laptop was within our shared home. Your cloud account was logged in on a device that I own, and the dash cam in Loughlin's car. He had borrowed my car 2 months ago. I merely failed to inform you that I had installed cameras in it for insurance purposes." I surveyed the crowd. Everything you've witnessed serves as legally obtained evidence, which has been forwarded to both their legal representatives. Loughlin attempted to flee, yet I had hired security for the event, 3 imposing, proficient men stationed at the exits. They didn't physically restrain him, but made it clear he wasn't leaving. "Sit down, Loughlin," I ordered, and he complied. Turning to the microphone prepared for the toasts, I addressed the guests. "This revelation might shock you," I said, "but let me clarify. This was more than an affair. It was a scheme aimed at financially exploiting my sister and me. Loughlin owes nearly $250,000 to some dangerous individuals. He was marrying Tamsin to tap into her trust fund and clear those debts, while Verity remained married to me for the purpose of maximizing her divorce settlement. They had been after us, and they came very close to succeeding." I glanced at Verity. You need to be aware of something more, Verity. Recall the post-nuptial agreement you endorsed, the one intended to safeguard your assets from my legal predicaments. Her gaze sharpened. There has been no SEC investigation, never was, yet that contract you hastily signed without perusing on page 47, section 12, clause C, it stipulates that if either party commits adultery, they forfeit all rights to marital assets. I smirked. You essentially surrendered everything. Her complexion paled. Son of a language, Verity, we're at a wedding. I faced Lachlan, and you. 3 weeks ago, you were released from your debt obligations to those loan sharks, but now you owe me $220,000 plus interest, Lachlan. If payment is not made within 30 days, I have the right to seize your car, condo, and any liquid assets you possess. The gravity of the situation seemed to overwhelm Lachlan, who looked as if he might vomit. You couldn't, I could, and did. Tamsin, who had been crying earlier, now looked at Lachlan with a face etched in utter devastation and asked, "Did you ever love me?" Lachlan was unable to respond. Tamsin took off her engagement ring, a 3-carat diamond she had paid for herself, and threw it at his feet. "Get out," she said, and security escorted both Verity and Lachlan off the property. Their voices could still be heard arguing and cursing as they left the premises. I apologized for the disruption and invited the guests to continue eating, drinking, and enjoying themselves. Most people left, some stayed. Tamsin sat in the garden, still wearing her wedding dress, her makeup streaked by tears. I joined her there, offering my apologies. She thanked me, saying that I had saved her from marrying Lachlan. We sat together as the sun set over the estate, both of us now free from those who saw us only as resources to exploit. 6 weeks later, the divorce from Verity was finalized, thanks to a postnuptial agreement and documented evidence of adultery. She walked away with exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, nothing. Lachlan couldn't pay the debt he owed me, so I foreclosed on his condo, repossessed his car, and seized his remaining assets. This covered about 60% of what he owed, leaving a balance that continues to grow at an annual interest rate of 18%. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Verity and Lachlan tried to reconcile after everything fell apart, but they lasted only 3 months before Lachlan left her for someone else. Last I heard, Verity was working retail, and Lachlan was living with his parents. I don't take pleasure in their suffering, but I don't feel guilty about it either. They made their choices, they set the trap, and I simply made sure they were the ones who fell into it. Tamsin took some time to recover, traveling, seeing a therapist, throwing herself into her charity work. 6 months after the wedding that never was, she began dating again, this time with a genuinely kind man who knew nothing of her wealth. As for me, I completed the estate, which now spans 40 acres of gardens and forest, complete with a house more spacious than I'll ever need. I live there alone now, and some might find that sad, but I find it peaceful. Here's what I learned from all of this. You can't trust people just because you love them. You can't assume loyalty just because you've given someone your heart or your name, but you can trust yourself, your instincts, and the truth when someone shows it to you. When someone hurts you, plans your destruction as if it were a game, you should believe them and act accordingly. I didn't get revenge out of anger. I got revenge because it was the only logical response to their actions. They tried to take everything from me and my sister. They failed, and now they have nothing. That's not cruelty. That's justice, and I sleep very well at night.